So thank you all for having me. It's great to be back here. It's great to see some familiar faces. I actually give you guys a lot of credit for being here because I know when I was at this stage of the game, not that long ago, I'm married 4.5 years now, when I heard that there was a speaker, I was always like, are they really going to say anything new that I haven't heard before? So I really give you guys credit for being open. And I know when, I was at this stage, I felt like, if one more person tells me about what to put in my profile or what to say on a date, like, they just don't get it because that's not what's going to solve a singles crisis. And I remember hearing lines like, oh, you never know. And I always felt like, really? Do I not? Because I kind of feel like I do. Like, when you have enough experience and you know yourself well enough, you kind of do know. Or like, what does it hurt to give this guy a date or, go to this event? And I always wanted to answer, actually a lot. It hurts a lot. Like it just builds up the despair and the hopelessness when you just force yourself to invest in somebody that it's not going to go anywhere or go to a place that it's going to hurt to be there. And, I remember people, I felt like people try to convince me, commitment problems. And I was like, you know what? I have a commitment problem. I commit to giving too many people a chance that don't deserve it. I commit to giving people too much of a chance when I really know inside that it's not for me. That's my commitment problem. But I think that there's a really big misconception out there about the singles crisis. I think that most people think about, okay, there's a lot of people out there who want to find somebody and they can't. And obviously that is a tremendous part of it. But I think what really makes the singles crisis a crisis is that it doesn't make sense. It defies logic. I remember people used to try to pinpoint it to a certain group. Oh, it's because this group does this or this group does that. But the truth is it's happening to every level of observance, every subculture, every hashkafa. It's happening in Israel, it's happening in Europe, it's happening here. It just doesn't make sense. So the crisis is, how do you solve something that defies logic, that isn't rational? I also think that part of what makes it a crisis is it's a crisis of powerlessness, right? Like what gives life meaning, what gives a person hope is that there's something that you want in life and you go for it till you get it, right? But what if no matter how hard you try, no matter what you do, no matter how long you've been trying for, that thing that you want most in life just keeps eluding you? Like how are you supposed to feel happy then? How are you supposed to feel powerful then? So in my work with singles, I'm always looking for how do I empower them? How do I make a single person feel powerful over their life again? And how do you solve something that defies logic? So to do that, I take a two-pronged approach. I like to look at what's within your control, what are the aspects that are not within your control, and that you have to have a way to respond to each of those. So in terms of what's within your control, you just have to make sure that you're as marriageable as possible, that there's nothing standing in the way of you getting into a healthy relationship. So some of the things to consider in that area are, there's several factors that could make you only be attracted to people who are not actually good for you, who it's not going to work out with, and not attracted to people who you could actually have a happy, healthy relationship with. So you got to know if you have those, what those are, and work through them. Another thing is that you have to know how to be able to truly connect with somebody, or if there's something that you're doing to prevent connection. And another one is, knowing the right ways to put yourself out there and protecting yourself against burnout. Because burnout is what leads to despair, anxiety, depression, and nothing good happens from that place. So that's really important to be part of your plan is how do you prevent burnout. Now, I'm actually developing like a whole 8-week course around this thing, so obviously tonight I can't go in depth into any of those. You're welcome to join me in my course or to join the WhatsApp group. But tonight I want to focus on the other aspect is how to respond to what's not within your control. And that's what I call miracle making. So who am I and why should you listen to anything that I have to say? So yes, I am a therapist. I have lots of, clinical trainings under my belt. I've got lots of clinical experience. I have my, graduate degree from Columbia University, but I have to tell you that my most valuable knowledge and experience comes from my own life experience of nearly 20 years of unwanted singleness. So to give you my story in a nutshell, I'm from a modern Orthodox background, Long Island, Hafter, Young Israel. I'm one of those that, fromed out my year in Israel, became a year and a half in Israel. I go into the, shidduch dating system, and I think like, wow, I chose to live a life based in Torah. I'm always striving to get close to Hashem. Like, this is going to be a breeze, right? Like, I got to be rewarded for that, right? But not so smooth. But actually, at 23, I did get married. I married the man of my dreams. He was everything that I was looking for. The chemistry was there, the attraction was there, we had fun together, we had great conversations, we appeared to want the same things. We were from similar backgrounds, everything seemed lined up. Very quickly, that dream became a nightmare. We were divorced by the time it reached 6 months of marriage. Gone to marriage counseling, but counselor was like, there's no chance here, it's never gonna be good. I had to get out of it. Now, obviously, this was very devastating for me and really shocking. I was always a very careful, well thought out person, so I was really surprised to find myself in this situation. But I was also extremely grateful because you really don't know what's important in a marriage until you're in one. And so I had the advantage that now when I look for my lifelong marriage, I'll know exactly what I need and exactly what to look for. And I went to therapy then, and I just became a lot more confident, I became a lot more clear, and I thought okay, we're good now. And I remember everybody would tell me you have so much going for you, and you have what guys are looking for, don't worry, it's gonna be a breeze, you're gonna bounce right back out there. Well, it was about another 15 years till I got married again, and certainly not for a lack of trying. I did everything you could think of and then some. I was on the apps, I was on the websites, I went to singles events, I met with shadchanim, I went to people's Friday night tables. I don't have to tell you guys, you know the drill, you know what it is. So I did all of it plenty times over. And then at 37, I got to this place where I was just exhausted and run down and just couldn't handle it anymore. And it just brought me to this place of surrender. And I just turned to Hashem and I said, I give up. I give it over, really. You take I see that it's not me. I'm done trying to twist your arm. You lead, I'll follow. Wherever you put me, I'll say, okay, this is exactly where I need to be. Now, I know what you guys are thinking, oh yeah, the emotional breakthrough to God, been there, done that. So did I. That wasn't the first time that happened to me. That was probably time number 50 that it happened to me, that conversation. But what I want you to know is that it's a process. If you do it once and say, I didn't get what I want, then you give up, it's like you're not really getting it. So what's the marker that you really get it is that you come to a place of peace. You come to a place of flow. You come to a place of contentment that the outside circumstances don't weigh so much on the inside. And I felt like I had finally gotten there. And to really kind of cement and solidify and live from this place, I started a daily gratitude exercise. I started a practice of starting my days with reading out of Living Emunah book or reading out of a prayer book. I took a Jewish positive thinking course, and I was really feeling the best I ever felt spiritually and emotionally in a very long time, despite the fact that I was 37 and still hadn't found somebody. So maybe you think okay, spiritual redemption, this must be the point at which she found her husband, right? Not exactly. What happened next was I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. It was Hodgkin's lymphoma, which thankfully is a highly treatable cancer, so I was expected to survive. But of course, being a single person, the first thing that goes off in my head was, okay, now for sure it's not happening. I could hear that voice in the back of my head that is collecting all the evidence how, if it already felt like it was going to take a miracle, if it already seemed impossible, if it was already hard to get a good date before cancer, who is going to want somebody that now, assuming I survived, was in remission from stage 4 cancer, was going to be 39 at that point, fertility even much more in question now, forget it, it was over. But that was this voice in back of my head. Stronger than that voice in my head was this like pulsing in my heart. And I like paid attention to that pulsing, and I was like, what is that? Like, is that excitement? Like, could I be excited? And I realized that the cancer diagnosis felt extremely ironic. It came at a time in my life where I was starting my morning with lemon ginger waters for its detoxifying properties, followed by a green smoothie because of the antioxidants, the cancer preventing thing. I was getting exercise, ironically, because I don't like exercise. I'd gotten myself this small rebounder to do like trampoline exercises. And ironically, that's known to be good for the lymph system. And I had a cancer of the lymph system. I was in the best place I'd been in a long time, mentally, emotionally. I don't have a significant cancer history in my family. So like, it felt really surprising to find myself in this place. And I decided that irony is opportunity. I decided this must be good. And I was thinking to myself, what if this is my Kedas Yitzchak moment, right? Because I believe that everybody in their life is presented with it at least once, where God says to Abraham, I put you through a series of tests, you held on, now I gave you the biggest one of all, and because you passed, you get whatever you ever, like your greatest heart's desire. Like, what if this is my Kedas Yitzchak moment? So I decided to respond to the cancer diagnosis with faith, with trust, and to just keep going in the path that I was going. And I want to tell you that cancer was actually one of the best times of my life. I felt that I was cocooned in this experience of like only paying attention to the things that really matter in life and like not caring about anything that didn't. Like, let me tell you, when you're dealing with life and death, it's really hard to watch The Bachelor. Like, it just feels so stupid and insignificant when you're going through something like that. And it just really helped me to just came naturally at the time to just pay attention to like things that just felt meaningful and positive in my life. And like, I just couldn't care about anything outside of that. Thank God I responded really well to my treatments. I went into remission. And then 8 months into remission, I had my first date with the man that later became my husband. 9.5 months after the wedding, I gave birth to my first child. 20 months after that, I had my second son. And also, I want you to know my husband is 2.5 years younger than me. He's tall. I think he's good looking. He was never married before, and not that these things, are better than somebody who doesn't have those things, but just the point of like, it's hard to accomplish that under those circumstances. That's why I call it like the miraculous marriage. So something I want to point out is all those years that at the time I was the infamous size 2, and I had my long flowy hair, and I was dressed to kill, and I went out to all the things, and I made myself engaging and interesting to talk to. It never happened. And then and I had actually gained weight on chemo. I had my short boy hair from growing back after chemo, and I was just into remission. That's when it happened for me. So again, that's why I refer to it as a miraculous marriage, and like that it's signs that it's possible. So what's my point to you? That if you want to get married, you have to have cancer? No, obviously not, God forbid. But as far as I'm concerned, you do. God forbid, but what I mean by that is, once I also kept it secret for the most part while I was going through it because I was afraid, I didn't want anyone to ruin my positive energy around it. I really wanted to have the experience that I wanted to have, and I just didn't want other people's like fear or negativity crowding out my positivity. But when people found out, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize you're going through this. And my response to that was, don't worry, being single was much worse. and I want you to know I meant it. My experience of singleness was much, much worse than my experience with cancer. So what am I trying to say to you is that there's a war going out there, okay? I consider the singles crisis a war. If you're single, you are at war. You don't have the freedom to be passive. You can't sit there and just wait for God to say it's your turn. You have to arm yourself for war. So how do you arm yourself? I want to share with you what my biggest realization was after I went from single to married with a family. And that was everything you do matters. And I want you to know that at the time, I know it doesn't feel like it. But when you're on the other side, when you've gotten through it, you can see everything you do matters. And I mean that for the good, but unfortunately, I mean that for the bad too. So anytime that you are, choosing growth or investing in yourself or doing something in your best interest, it is getting you closer. And anytime that you are compromising your values and kind of acting out of that giving up place, it's going to make it take longer and it makes it harder. And your biggest enemy is survival mode. So anything that you do to cope that's coming from an unhealthy place. So you know what I'm talking about, all those things that start with, well, what does God expect of me? I have to do this. Or how else am I supposed to be happy? Or, whether that's, distracting yourself with TV, whether that's hanging around environments that aren't good for you, whether it's not keeping Shabbos, whether that's hooking up, whether that's going to parties that aren't for you, whatever that is, like, there's a list, and you know what that enemy could be for you. But that place of survival mode, of coping, of just giving up and not being your best self, that is your biggest enemy in this war. And trust me, nobody could judge you for that. If you get into an argument with somebody over what do you expect, you will win. Okay? Like, you're right. What can a person expect? You are being expected to be superhuman. You are. But if it's going to take a miracle to get out of singleness, you don't create a miracle out of a compromised place. You have to create that miracle by trying to be your best self. And inevitably, like, nobody stays in that place all the time. I didn't either. Like, inevitably you lose that place. But you want to have a commitment to that and keep bringing yourself back every time you stray. And I want to share with you now my next biggest realization, which was going from single to married, and then especially having children, felt like going from being on pause to fast forward. Because that's what I believe the pain of singleness is. It's feeling like your life is on pause. But then once I was married, and especially with children, like, oh my gosh, it felt like fast forward. Like, every single day is a new challenge, a new thing to figure out. Like, I felt like I was playing tennis. Like, okay, now it's here, now it's there, now it's there. Like, it was just like fast speed, new things. And I thought to myself, like, what is this? So married people get tested, but like single people don't. Like, why does it feel so challenging in a different way, to have a family in a way that a single person doesn't? And that's when I realized it's just that the married person with a family, their tests are more obvious. It's like in your face, you can't avoid it. Either you take it on or you don't, but it's right there. For a single person, your test is so much more subtle. Like, you have to look for it. You have to choose it. You have to look for what you're being tested in and how you can pass it. You have to look for, how do I invest myself? How do I choose growth in my life? You have to look for how to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And this isn't about Orthodox, black hat, whatever. None of those labels are in the Torah. That's not from God. It's just about where you are right now and what's the next thing that you can do to move forward and to make your life more meaningful and yourself more into the person you were always meant to be. I remember always hearing the line, "Mishaneh makom, mishaneh mazal." And I've always heard of people, it means to, if you change your place, you change your luck. And I always heard of people, like, some people changed their name, some people actually moved, trying to get different luck. And after going through this, I had a much deeper understanding of that line. I believe that when you change your mindset, when you change what you put your attention on, how you perceive things, what you put your energy towards, what you surround yourself with, it changes you. And when you're a new person and a different person, then different things can happen to you. I now, looking back, see my cancer as God saying to me, I have something great in store that I want to give to you, but right now, you're losing yourself. You're not a vehicle for it. And so for me to give this to you, I need to know that you're going to know how to use it. So the cancer was like an opportunity, or if you want to say a wake-up call, to get back on track, to find myself, to remember, who am I? What am I here for? What is the point of life? And to really commit to that so that I could be a vehicle for the bounty, the blessing that he wanted to give me. So just to wrap up this part, and then either we get into some questions or I can give you some more practical pointers, I want to end with a story. I have a friend that when we were 38, she got engaged. It was her second engagement. She had a broken engagement before, and she was over the moon happy. She was so excited. We were all excited for her. And we asked her, so how'd you do it? How'd you break out, And she said, I said to myself that no matter what happens to me in life, no matter where I find myself, no matter what my experience it is, whether it's positive or it's negative, I'm just going to say, thank you, Hashem. And she said, I felt like myself starting to change from it, and sure enough, I got engaged. But what happened next was a couple of weeks before the wedding got called off. And I make plans to get together with her to see how she's doing. And here we're sitting in Flatbush, Brooklyn, and amongst all these women wearing wigs, and I'm wearing wig for a different reason because I'm going through chemo, and she doesn't have her rings on anymore like she did, before, like all these other people around us. And I say to her, God has a funny way of playing favorites. And she looked at me and she said, you're right. And I didn't have to explain myself at all. She did something that was very difficult to do, but even when her wedding got called off, she said, thank you. And when it feels like God has abandoned you, he's probably actually right there. If it feels like he makes you struggle more than other people have to, it's only because he has bigger plans for you. He thinks that you're capable of more, and he needs you to be in that place so that he can give it to you. And that's why I say it's going to war. It's a constant battle of how to get there, how to stay there, how to get back there, how to keep going. I want you to know that both me and that friend got married later that year. And both to good guys who treat us well, and their priority number one is to give to us and to make us happy. And I wanted to say before also, in terms of that previous marriage that I had, the lesson that I took out of that was there's a difference between a boyfriend and a husband. And who I married was great as a boyfriend, but not great for me as a husband. When it comes to a husband, you want to focus on character and how that person treats you, because that's going to matter much more in day-to-day life than chemistry, personality, how much fun it is together. I'm not going to say that those things don't matter at all, but really marriage is about the daily grind of life and who's a good partner to have through that, and who's like a good person you want to make decisions with. And it's really going to come down to how they treat you. So that's like the gist of it. But my advice to you is, yes, you're at war. I don't want to minimize that, but it's possible, we're coming up in Hanukkah, right? It's possible to have miraculous winnings out of a war. And so, I want you to go and make a miracle. Now, I know that it's getting late. I have more that I could share with you in terms of like more practical tips of how to do this. But I'm going to leave it to you guys if you want me to take some questions, or you want me to go into those practical tips, or I don't know if people want to kind of shout out or. Yeah, practical tips. Okay, you got it. So I call this skills of miraculous dating. So one is to acquire a good eye. We hear called an ayin tov. So the way that you do this is gratitude practices. So I'm sure you've heard it before, to come up every day with different things that you're grateful for, from the little to the small. You can come up with different things that you feel you did well that day. But all these things are to attune yourself to the positive in life, the possibilities, and to like untrain yourself from dwelling on the negative, what feels hopeless. And you want to be aware of the story that you have, because everybody has a story. So if that story is, it doesn't happen to me, it happens to everybody else, or anything else along those lines, you want to, acquiring a good eye, training yourself to see the positive in yourself, the positive in others, the positive in the situations around you, causes you to see possibility. And then you tend to get back what you see and what you put your attention on. The other thing is to work on humility. So whether you work on this for yourself, or I also recommend praying and asking for humility and asking to find somebody humble. Because at the root of the singles crisis is an epidemic of entitlement. Everybody's thinking about, what I want. But it's not about getting what you want. It's about working on wanting what you get. We're not as in control of our lives as we think we are, and happiness ultimately comes down to how do you respond to what you're given, not about how do I make things the way that I want it to be. So stop trying to steer your life and instead allow yourself to be led. Instead of saying, why me, say what now? Instead of trying to change your circumstances, try to create flow by just saying, okay, now that I'm in these circumstances, what's the most that I can do? And obviously within reason. I don't want you to put too much stress or pressure on yourself, because that's not good either. It's really just about what's one more thing, what's one little thing, what's one foot in front of the other, that I feel like I'm investing in my best self. Another thing that you want to work on with yourself, you want to pray for you and to meet somebody who has this, is the ability to do hard things. Okay, that's what I've found is a big difference between people who are single and people who get married. By the way, married people are no more put together or psychologically well than single people. Okay, I can tell you as a therapist, I've worked with many married people. They're not any healthier than you guys are. But a difference that I do see is your relationship to challenge. So your ability to take hard things, get through challenges, and allow it to change you for the better. See it as something that brings out different strengths of yourself, to shows you how much that you're capable of, rather than something to avoid or resist or distract yourself from. And another thing to work on, to pray for, is to be able to see through the illusion. So I tried to give you an example of this before, but this is what I hear from a lot of people. I'm going to be real about this. I'm going to be honest. So do the skinny, gorgeous, charming, rich, for the guys or whatever people have it better? In a lot of ways, yes. They do get more attention. They might get asked out for more dates. People might ask about them more, but it doesn't mean you're any closer to marriage. Okay, so you have to see through the illusion and stop seeing as an unlucky person, or of course, guys are going to go for this or whatever it is, because at the end of the day, that's not actually what gets you married. And people, are more impressed with and want to be around more somebody with a good heart, who's kind, who treats them well, who's a person of substance. All the other stuff kind of falls to the side after that initial attraction. It doesn't matter how many dates you have. It doesn't matter if you haven't gone on a date in over a year. I know plenty of people who were in that situation, didn't even have a date in over a year, and then they go and get married. So you can't get caught up in the illusion that this is what reality is. You have to be able to see through it to what reality actually is. And then what I said before about making a commitment to keep coming back. It's impossible to be in the best place all the time, but when you make that commitment of who you want to be, where you want to be, how you want to respond to things, then you can keep coming back to that place. So those are some practical tools. Do we have time to put it out there for questions?